Batman is probably my favorite superhero. The only character who comes remotely close is Spider-Man, but overall, I like Batman more. While a vast majority of my knowledge of the character and his lore comes from the various film and game adaptations over the years, I do know some more lore from the comics, and all of that knowledge combined makes me love this character so much. But man, did his games used to suck. Batman games used to always be pretty damn bad. Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Batman Vengeance, Batman Begins. A Batman game seems like a no-brainer. He has such a vast array of villains he can fight and over 80 years of stories to be adapted. And yet for a while there, Batman games were never much more than crappy games made to tie into films. But that all changed in 2009 with the release of Batman Arkham Asylum, which kicked off the Batman Arkham series.
The Batman Arkham series is one of my favorite game series of all time, and I haven't even played Arkham Knight yet. I mean, that's how good these games are. But it's been years since I played any of these, and I'd actually like to beat Arkham Knight, so why not play through and talk about the whole series, of course starting with the one that started it all.
Batman Arkham Asylum began development in 2007, and I feel like I remember hearing somewhere that it started development as a tie-in game for The Dark Knight, but became its own game later on. But from what I can tell, this wasn't actually the case. Maybe it's just that there was a game for Batman Begins, then this was the next Batman game, well, if you ignore Lego Batman, which may actually be that Dark Knight tie-in game. The game was released in August of 2009 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, but it skipped the Wii and DS. Now, this may seem like a no-brainer. Duh, a game like this wouldn't really make sense on the DS, let alone the Wii. But there were versions of this game being worked on for those systems, both with some footage released. The Wii version doesn't look half bad. It looks exactly like what you'd expect the game to look like on Wii. It would have been developed by Red Fly Studios, who were the king of Wii remakes of Xbox 360 games. The demo takes place on a rooftop in Gotham, so it seems like this version could have been a prequel to the main game. And honestly, while it would have been very late in the console's life, I could see the game released on the PlayStation 2 as well. I mean, hell, X-Men Origins Wolverine released on the PS2 a few months earlier. There's also footage of a prototype for the DS version, which looks like a DS game, that's for sure. It's a shame neither of these were finished, as they both could have been very interesting alternate versions. But their cancellation didn't change the normal game in any way, so now let's take a look at it. I first played it in September of 2019. Around that time, Epic Games made the whole trilogy free, for whatever reason, so I scooped them up. At the time, all I had was an old work computer from, I want to say, 2010. I doubted the games could run on it, but I gave it a shot. I turned all the graphical settings down to the lowest they could be, and to my surprise, it ran. It was very ugly and at a rough 20 frames per second, but I didn't care because it was still Batman Arkham Asylum. I fell in love with it and beat it in just 2 days before moving on to the sequel, Arkham City. A year later, I picked up physical copies of Asylum and City for the Xbox 360 and gave Asylum another go, but I never finished it. Since then, I've maybe tried it again once or twice, but I've never beaten it again because I'd always preferred to just play City.
And that's a testament to how good City is. I mean, I loved Asylum when I first played through it, but after I played City, I always had a really hard time going back to Asylum. But now that it's been half a decade since I last actually beat this game, it's time to try again and see if Batman Arkham Asylum is still good.
For this playthrough, I'll be playing it through the Batman Arkham trilogy for Switch. Now, some denounce this version because it's the Switch version, but there's nothing wrong with Asylum or City, it's just Night that's the issue. So, with all of that, let's finally dive back into the madness with Batman Arkham Asylum. Let's start with a brief rundown of the story. Batman catches the Joker after he kidnaps the mayor, which is pretty irrelevant. Batman takes Joker to Arkham Asylum, but wants to hang around because he's suspicious of how easily the Joker went down. And it turns out his suspicions were right, as Joker breaks free and, with the help of Harley Quinn, seizes control of the asylum. Batman chases after him where he comes face to face with some weird monster thing, and after defeating it, Batman chases after Officer Gordon. He follows Gordon's trail to the medical facility where he meets Dr. Young, who mentions that the Joker is after some notes of hers that she left back at the Arkham Mansion. Batman continues his pursuit of the Commissioner, taking down Harley and saving Gordon, but when checking out Bane, the Joker infuses him with Titan, which is important, I swear. After taking down Bane, Gordon leaves the island and Batman goes to the mansion to find Dr. Young and her notes. She was taken by Zsasz, but luckily she hid them in the library, so Batman finds them and destroys them. He then goes to Warden Sharp's office and saves Dr. Young Young from Zaz, and she then fills in Batman on what's going on. Dr. Young had been experimenting with the Titan stuff I mentioned earlier. She was selling Joker some of it, but eventually wanted to stop, which ticked off Joker, so he planned the whole takeover of the island. She mentions that he has a lab in the botanical gardens, and she tries to get Batman the access codes there, but they're hidden in a vault that was rigged with an explosive that kills her. So Batman then chases after Warden Sharp so he can get the access codes to the island. Harley takes him to the penitentiary, so Batman follows. Inside, Harley lets Poison Ivy free, which becomes important later. Batman finds Warden Sharp to get the codes and then chases down and defeats Harley. Batman then heads to the botanical gardens where he finds the Joker's labs and fights some Titan enhanced enemies. Batman then meets with Poison Ivy where he learns that there's a plant that can counter the Titan's formula effect, but it's growing down in Killer Croc's lair. So Batman goes down there, gathers the plant, makes the cure, defeats Poison Ivy, then all of a sudden, final boss time. Joker has been planning a party all night, and once Poison Ivy is defeated, Joker invites Batman over. With the cure done, in a last-ditch effort, Joker injects himself with a Titan formula, turning himself into a monster. So Batman defeats him, finally stopping the Joker and restoring peace on the island. Of course, there's some more layers to the story. This was just a brief rundown, but overall, the story is solid. It's not amazing by any means, but it's a good narrative for the game to follow. I personally didn't feel like there was much character progression in Batman, considering that at this point he's already seasoned. It's a good story, but it's not like one of the best Batman stories, but it provides a great backdrop for the game itself.
Oh, that's right, this is a game. Maybe I should talk about the gameplay mechanics.
The best way to describe Batman Arkham Asylum is a beat-em-up Metroidvania. It's weird, I never hear people talk about it, but the Batman Arkham games, especially this one, are Metroidvanias. It consists of you exploring various environments, collecting different tools that help unlock new areas. The big difference between this though is that this feels much more linear since the story plays a much larger role. While there's no official term for this, at least to my knowledge, I consider this game what I like to call a guided Metroidvania. It's a Metroidvania, but in-game characters tell you where to go and what to do next, which really helps the pace greatly. Of course, the game isn't completely free from moments where you have no idea where to go and what to do, but those moments are way less frequent than they are in other Metroidvanias. And of course, it's a beat 'em up as there's a lot of combat. Now, the combat in these games is incredible, and it all started here. At first, it seems like it's just spamming a single button, but right before an enemy attacks you, some blue bolts appear above their head, and if you press the right button when that happens, Batman counters. You can also swing your cape at enemies to stun them and jump over them to open up their back for attacks. And on top of all of that, you can also use gadgets for battle. This makes the combat system so much more engaging. You need to look out for enemies who are about to attack you so you can counter them, plus the tools add so much potential and combat variety. Another thing I like is takedowns. After a few hits, you'll briefly knock out an enemy and you can perform a special takedown on them, but it leaves you open for a couple seconds, giving enemies an open window to hit you. But if you don't take the enemy down while they're knocked out, they'll quickly regain consciousness and start attacking you again. The combat is just so fun. I never got tired of getting in fights because of how fun each encounter is. Hell, I sometimes found myself going out of my way to fight enemies because it's just so damn fun here. But sometimes you can't just face enemies head on, as they have guns, and they will shoot you. So throughout the game, there are various predator areas where you must stick to the shadows and pick up your enemies one at a time. There are usually gargoyles that you can swing around on to keep the high ground and stay hidden, and from there you can strike at enemies. Of course, stealth is the easiest option, sneaking behind the enemies and performing a silent takedown, but you can also glide kick enemies then perform a normal takedown, which is much easier, but also alerts nearby enemies. The predator sections are mostly pretty cool, but they can get annoying at times. Sometimes the clunk can get in the way, and other times, enemies cluster up and refuse to declutter, making it impossible to take them on. But aside from those annoyances, the predator section are a fun way to break up the normal combat and add some more challenge. Speaking of challenge and facing enemies, there are also a bunch of boss fights, which are,
super fucking lame.
The series would go on to have amazing boss fights, but the few fights here are super lame and easy. Titan Henchman, just stun him, hit him, repeat until he's defeated. Bane, fight a bunch of other enemies while waiting for him to charge at you. Then when he does, throw a battering at him and dodge. He'll run into a wall then attack him. Repeat. Harley Quinn, defeat the enemies while avoiding a floor that occasionally lights up with electricity. How riveting. 2 Titan Henchmen. These guys aren't hard to take down at all. Killer Croc.
Okay, let me rant about this section, please. So when you go down into his lair to find the plant you need, you have to walk on these conveniently placed wood rafts, but you can only walk at a normal speed because if you run, Croc will catch you. Now, during this, Croc will randomly come up from the water and run at you, but all you have to do is hit him with a batarang. You have a tracker that you follow to the plant you need, and after a few tedious minutes of slowly walking and occasionally throwing a batarang at Croc, you make it to the plant only to realize there's not enough there, so you need to find more of these plants down here. So cue 10 more minutes of just walking around the sewers, throwing batarangs at Croc and finding these plants. It is the most tedious and unfun thing in this game and possibly series by a long shot. It grinds the pace to a halt in a game that usually moves at a very solid pace. And to end it all off, you don't even fight Croc. Eventually you just run your way out of the sewer and that's it. God, I hate this part. Oh god. Anyways, what's next? Oh yeah, back to the lame-ass bosses.
Another Titan henchman. How do these count as bosses? Poison Ivy, dodge her attacks and throw a batarang at her when she deflowers? Or, oh god, I can rephrase that. Throw batarangs at her when she opens up her... just throw a batarang when there's an opening. 2 more Titan enemies, man, enough already. And then Titan Joker. He looks super stupid, but man, his fight is stupid as well. You just fight enemies, then when you defeat a wave, Joker turns around and you just pull him down. Repeat a few times and that's it.
And those are the boss fights. Real winners, aren't they?
It's a shame that the boss fights were so lame in this game, but they get much better as the series goes on, thankfully. Another thing that kinda counts as a boss fight that I didn't mention in the story is Scarecrow. At a few points in the story, Batman goes through hallucinations from Scarecrow. The first time is in the medical facility where he thinks he sees Gordon's dead body, then he enters the morgue where he opens a body bag with his mom's body, another with his dad's, and one final one with Scarecrow, and a pretty good jump scare. The second encounter happens in the mansion when walking down one of the halls. The hall slowly turns into Crime Alley as Batman sort of relives his parents dying. After getting up, he turns back into his child self and we hear some great dialogue between Gordon and another cop, showing how Gordon cared about Bruce ever since the incident.
He'll be fine. A kid like that with all that money, he'll be just fine.
Shut up, no. He's 8 years old and all alone. Money won't fix that.
Which is really nice knowing their relationship now. The final encounter happens in intensive treatment as Batman tries to find Croc's lair. When walking through a corridor, the intercom says,
"Did anyone catch the game last night?"
What?
In one of the best jump scares in anything ever, the game makes you think it glitches out. It then cuts to the opening shot with the Scarecrow face in the sky instead of the bat symbol, and then the opening plays again, but with the roles of Batman and Joker reversed. Now, I first played this game on that crappy old computer back in 2019. I genuinely thought I pushed the computer to its limits and it pooped out, so it got me really good. Anyways, each of these Scarecrow encounters climax in a stealth platforming section where you have to avoid Scarecrow's glare in the environments. These are pretty fun, albeit simple. Just wait for him to look somewhere else, then keep running. I remember not liking them at first, but honestly, all these years later, I like it. The last major thing I want to talk about is the world, Arkham Island. This game appropriately takes place in Arkham Asylum alone, which is broken up into multiple buildings spread across the island. There's also a primitive bat cave, but overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this area. It's mainly that I'm so spoiled by what we got from later entries. City, Origins, and Night gave us full-on cities to explore, while this is just some giant buildings on an island with not much going on in between them. Navigating the island isn't fun either. Most of it is done on foot, and man, there's a reason why we don't see Batman run much in movies. Because it looks so stupid. I hate running around the island. There are very few moments where you can grapple and glide around. Most of it you're just on foot, and I feel like a massive loser. The island also isn't crazy fun to explore. There are a bunch of Riddler trophies and Riddler challenges where you have to find something in the environment described by a riddle, which is kinda neat. Speaking of collectibles, there are also interview tapes everywhere, which are cool to listen to. It's like Beatrice talking with these villains, and it can be a bit unnerving at points listening to them speak. As you meet characters, you also unlock character bios, which have a piece of art from the comics and a synopsis of their character, along with some fun little details about them. Character trophies, which are 3D models of characters. And lastly, challenge mode, a staple of the Arkham games. Basically, you fight enemies either head-on or stealthily. Everything you do gets you points, and you just try to get the best score you can. You can of course play as Batman, but you can also play as the Joker. He was originally exclusive to the PS3 version, but he's playable in the Switch port, which is really cool. While challenge mode isn't my thing, it's a really cool inclusion to give you more to do.
Well, and that is Batman Arkham Asylum. Is it still good? Yes, of course it is.
While it doesn't hold up to the rest of the series in many ways, there is one thing that no other entry in the series comes close to doing well. The atmosphere. This place is so scary. The grimy halls of each building leaves you feeling so uneasy. It often feels claustrophobic, and while you're the big and scary Batman, at points it's easy to forget. The asylum instills this mood on you. It feels like a dark place, and its eerie nature is something no other game in the series comes close to. And while its boss fights, world, combat, and structure would be improved upon in later entries, it shouldn't be understated how good of a first entry this is. This game is forever important, as it's a success that allowed Rocksteady to reach for the skies with the sequels and turn the Batman Arkham series into one of the greatest game series. But it wouldn't have been possible at all without this first game.
However, while I still love this game, even after replaying it over 5 years later, I can't really see myself replaying it in the next couple of years. There just really isn't anything here that would make me want to replay it anytime soon. Wait a minute. GameStop exclusive Dem Bone Scarecrow Challenge map? Okay, so there is one thing